It's been just a few days since the cold-blooded murder of Renee Good by ICE. Or, wait, it's been just a few days since ICE used lethal force on what the government is calling a domestic terrorist. Now, which is it? Ah, yes, the power of language, and especially inflammatory language, that raises the temperature to a fever pitch. Now, what I was seeing over the weekend, and ever since this happened, was just an immediate rush to control the narrative on either side of the aisle. Both sides using inflammatory language, quick labels, and all of that in a sea of confusion where no one really knows the truth yet. Now, I'm a writer, and I have a past with creative writing, specifically screenwriting, and I also have now worked as a copywriter in marketing for more than 6 years. So I happen to have a very unique relationship with words. I believe that words are really powerful, and because of our associations with those words, they can pull out and trigger within us all sorts of emotions. And in fact, when they're used really well, that's what they are supposed to do. When you're trying to sell an idea or a narrative or a feeling, you use words to trigger emotion. And because the internet is what it is, and we've all been warring with each other, and everything is politicized, and everything is a left versus right issue, the inflammatory language just seems to go up, up, up. In my opinion, what happens is actually words lose their meaning. So as I'm watching this whole thing unfold, and everyone's trying to grab hold of the narrative and trying to make assumptions about who each of these people were that were involved in this and whether or not they were justified in what they did and all of that, I started to see recurring words or phrases. And I thought to myself, not enough people are talking about or even thinking about the words that we use to describe things. However, those words are so inflammatory at times that they can whip us up into an emotional tailspin. Let me show you what I mean. So I jumped into Chat GPT and asked some questions about what these words mean, quite literally what they mean, and if there's any historical reference to what they mean as well, and how it relates to what just happened. So this is something that I saw being said a lot across social media, which is that ICE are murderers, he murdered, and especially cold-blooded murder. Now, cold-blooded literally implies premeditation and intent, which that wouldn't really apply to this situation. This was clearly a situation of something going wrong and rather quickly in the moment. I wouldn't say it was premeditated. So calling this cold-blooded murder is already inaccurate. Murder in and of itself is a legal conclusion, not a moral reaction. So that's the kind of thing that is determined in the courts. What this kind of language does is jumps ahead of the legal process. Now, as chat says here, it may reflect outrage, but it is factually unproven. Now, here's another one that I've been seeing, not even just in relation to this, but something that I've been seeing for quite a while now, which is referring to ICE as Nazis or the Gestapo. Now, I asked ChatGPT about this, and his fact check was it's historically inaccurate. The Gestapo was a secret police force operating in a one-party totalitarian state, conducting extrajudicial arrests, torture, disappearances, and mass executions. Okay, mass executions. So ICE does not at all apply here. It operates under U.S. law. It's subject to courts, media scrutiny, and oversight. It does not operate as a secret police force. As Chat's verdict says, it dilutes the historical meaning and inflames emotion without improving accuracy. This is why the words that we use are so important and why using them can actually dilute what they mean in the first place. Now, here, paramilitary execution squad. Yes, I did actually see that. And fact check, false. An execution requires detention, control over the person, intentional killing after capture. None of that happened here. ICE agents are armed federal officers, not a paramilitary death squad. Chat's verdict is the framing is factually wrong and structurally misleading. Okay, now let's take a look at this. Another thing that I was seeing over and over again was that this was justified self-defense. Okay, now ChatGPT says it's plausible, but not yet proven. Self-defense is a claim, not a conclusion. It requires reasonable fear of imminent harm. Certainly you can make the argument, but how would we know? This term fits procedurally, but remains unverified until evidence and rulings are complete. To my point at the beginning of this video, the government also came out and said this was an act of domestic terrorism. If the driver intentionally used a vehicle as a weapon against the federal agents to influence government action, it could meet the statutory definition. But that determination requires proven intent, clear motive, and supporting evidence. Honestly, I don't really know how you can ever know the motive unless you're in someone's head. Now, all of this is just to say that language and words are really, really powerful. They can literally move people. They can mobilize people, as we've seen. But deeper than that, they can create an emotional reaction that forms into a worldview, that forms into belief and perception, and ultimately reality. So I happened to come across this video on YouTube of this creator, Nick Freitas, who I guess is a Green Beret, as well as a politician and a creator. And he gives his perspective on the shooting. He also tells this really interesting anecdote from the perspective of the law enforcement and about how at one point there were these journalists that went into a law enforcement training as part of an exercise to teach them what it's like to be in law enforcement. And it's funny because he says that the journalists quite often ended up shooting civilians because they acted erratically or they moved weird, and most of the time erred on the side of self-protection. And the point of this exercise was to teach them that a bit of nuance and context about what it's also like on the other side, the side of the law enforcement. He goes on to say that they had hoped that this would reflect in how they report on law enforcement, these types of things in the media. Now, here he is coming out of telling that story and says a little bit about narrative control and language that I think is really important.
Do you think maybe you should take this new knowledge, this new understanding, and apply it when reporting, not so that you can cover up for when there's a bad shooting, but so you can add the proper context so that the people that you're supposed to be informing understand this before they start jumping to conclusions? And the answer in reality was no. Because what we find with so many of these people is they're not concerned about the context. They're not concerned about what's going through the minds of the people engaged. They're not concerned about any of it. They have a narrative to protect. And the truth is not only uninteresting to them, it's catastrophic to their narrative. And so manipulating it or lying about it or covering it up or reporting on it in the worst possible light is morally and intellectually justifiable to them because they are so sure of the broader narrative that they're trying to protect. And once again, that's what I saw as I looked at this. I look at the comments from people in my own section going, well, you really think he had to gun her down? Let me stop you right there. The moment you use the term gun her down, you are now putting into the image of people's minds this idea that this ICE officer just got bored and decided to shoot this poor woman who was simply trying to drive away. But then you watch the video, you look at the evidence, that's clearly not what happened. And yet, those are the terms you choose to use. Is that because that is an accurate reflection of what took place? Or is it because that's the sort of terminology that helps your narrative?
At the end of the day, this is a huge tragedy and is something that should not have happened. But aside from that, what I wanted to redirect your attention to, because I'm sure you're seeing a ton of videos that are, debating whether or not the officer was justified, debating whether or not her wheels were turned toward him or away, but to redirect your attention to the language that we use, the words that we use, the power of words, and even deeper than that, the emotions that they trigger. Because, speaking as a marketer here, if you can trigger an emotion, you can sell a belief. If you stayed to the end of this video, thank you. Do me a favor and hit the like button if you got any value out of this, and also subscribe to my channel. I'm a really small channel right now and I'm trying to grow. And please stick around because I'm going to have a lot more videos like this breaking things down in the media and culture.